Thom Hartmann here on the best of the rest of science and green news. You need to know this. Earlier this month, the Obama administration announced that they will delay a decision on the Keystone XL pipeline until after the November elections. According to Reuters, the State Department said that federal agencies need more time to weigh in on the pipeline before a decision can be made. In addition, officials pointed to legal battles like a recent case in Nebraska as an example of the ongoing controversy surrounding the Keystone pipeline. That case, which will determine whether the TransCanada has to secure a new route through Nebraska, may not even be decided until January of next year. Supporters of the pipeline are calling the delay pure politics, but this decision is too important to be rushed. Environmental groups are still demanding that Keystone is blocked entirely, but in the meantime, they have declared the delay a temporary victory. Jamie Henn of the organization 350.org said, quote, "It's disappointing that President Obama doesn't have the courage to reject Keystone XL right now, but this is clearly another win for pipeline opponents," end quote. We've heard from scientists, economists, citizens, even former President Jimmy Carter, who all say that the Obama administration should reject the Keystone XL pipeline. Nothing else, this delay gives us more time to continue our fight against this toxic tar sands pipeline. For the sake of our environment, our nation, and our future, we must push the president to reject Keystone once and for all. Connecticut is one step closer to banning fracking wastewater from their state. Earlier this month, that state's Judiciary Committee approved a ban on the disposal or storage of the toxic byproduct, and the measure will soon be considered by the full state Senate. In support of that ban, activists delivered more than 5,600 signatures to Connecticut lawmakers, saying that residents don't want their state to become the next dumping ground for hydraulic fracturing waste. Three similar bills were attempted last year, but never made it out of committee. But this year's attempt, Senate Bill 327, looks like it actually has a good chance of becoming law. Although Connecticut does not have natural gas deposits, residents worry that wastewater from thousands of drill sites in surrounding states could end up being stored or disposed of in their area. Other states like Massachusetts are considering similar bills, and Vermont enacted a ban against fracking wastewater in 2012. Even in states where gas drilling isn't an issue, residents don't want anything to do with this toxic waste. Hopefully, Senate Bill 327 makes it through Connecticut's legislature and that state's environment is safe from the dangers of fracking. Blind luck is the only thing preventing a huge asteroid from hitting Earth. According to former astronaut Ed Lu, our planet has been hit with 26 multi-kiloton explosions since 2001, all of which were due to asteroid impacts. Scientists and researchers who study space say that we need a sophisticated warning system to warn us about near-Earth objects. Those experts explain that asteroid impacts are not rare, but actually 3 to 10 times more common than previously thought. Since our government has slashed funding for NASA, Ed Lu and other former astronauts have endorsed a system that will be launched on the privately funded SpaceX Falcon rocket in 2019. They say that the future warning system, which will scan space using infrared wavelengths, will warn us of any objects larger than 500 feet, so-called city killer asteroids. It's amazing that with all our national concern about security, our government is doing very little about this very real threat. Thankfully, SpaceX and their team of experts will be watching out for dangers from space. What do you do with the land that's been destroyed by the fossil fuel industry? Well, turn it into a solar farm, of course. The Maywood Solar Farm in Indiana is 43 acres, and it's made up of 36,000 solar panels. And it sits on the site of a former coal tar refinery plant, which was designated a Superfund site by the EPA. Back in the 1980s, environmental regulatory officials found that the groundwater beneath that plant was contaminated with dangerous chemicals and ruled that the property could no longer be used. However, thanks to the EPA's new Superfund redevelopment project, that land is now one of 85 renewable energy projects that together produce 507 million watts of clean, renewable power. And toxic sites in Georgia, North Carolina, and Massachusetts could soon be doing the same. It's nearly impossible to undo the damage that chemical plants and fossil fuel development does to our environment. But this is a great way to make use of the land that they've destroyed. We should be expanding this program all over the country and breathing new life into devastated land by building solar and wind plants in every area that these industries have destroyed. And finally, Beverly Hills has said no to fracking. Last week, one of the nation's most well-known zip codes passed an all-out ban on hydraulic fracturing and all related extreme drilling techniques. Their new bill is the first of its kind in the state of California, and it even prohibits activities outside the city that would drill for oil or gas underneath Beverly Hills. City Council member John Mersch explained, "We are exerting our power as a city to say that fracking is not a compatible land use in Beverly Hills." He added, "This issue goes beyond that. This is not a not in my backyard issue. It should not be in anyone's backyard." All around our nation, cities, towns, and even whole states are banning this dangerous process. The American people don't want more earthquakes. They don't want more contaminated water. And that means they don't want any more drilling for natural gas. If Congress won't act to protect us from fracking, then slowly but surely we can protect ourselves, even if we have to do it one city at a time. And that's the way it is for the week of April 28th, 2014. I'm Thom Hartmann on Science and Green News.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program.
Hey there, everybody. It's Leslie Marshall again. If you were with me yesterday, thank you for rejoining us today. I'm sitting in for Tom on the Thom Hartmann Program, and we have a lot to talk about in the next 3 hours. I hope you'll be joining us. We have guests, and it's anything goes Friday, I'm told by the crew here. So I hope that you'll weigh in with your opinions on issues I'm putting out there, but things you're thinking about as well. 866-987-TOM is the number. More than a pleasure to have with us someone that I know. We're connected on Facebook. We chat there. He's been on my program as well. Mark Taylor-Canfield. Mark is an independent journalist. He's based in Seattle. He is also a contributor for the Huffington Post and Truthout. Hey, Mark, how you doing? Happy Friday. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. Oh, don't tell me. I did it again, right? Hey, Mark, thanks for joining us. Good afternoon.
Hey, Leslie, it's good to talk to you again. It's been a while.
I know. It is good to talk to you again. Well, speaking of again, I think we talked last year. It is May, another day in May, another May Day, and more protest in Seattle. Tell us from your perspective, being there in Seattle in the Pacific Northwest, what people are, upset about. And it would seem there are two huge issues that I heard most of the chanting on today when I was checking everything out online and checking it out on TV and every other news source out there. Share with us your take.
Well, it was an interesting night, Leslie, because Thom Hartmann was actually in town at Town Hall giving a presentation about his book. And I walked out and I got word while I was at Town Hall that something was happening on Capitol Hill. And sure enough, there was a big confrontation going on between police and protesters. The police were trying to clear the street at that point, so this was getting around 10:30 at night. By the time it was over, at least 9 arrests and pepper spray was used on the protesters again this year.
Again, yeah.
Which is becoming an annual confrontation, between protesters on May Day and the police, which started back in 2012 when there was actually damage to a federal courthouse, which ended up in a grand jury investigation and the jailing of a few activists who were placed on solitary confinement for refusing to cooperate. And then last year there was another confrontation where 18 were arrested, and once again police used concussion grenades and pepper spray, and at least one reporter for our local TV station KOMO was hit in the face with pepper spray last year and was blinded for several minutes while she tried to make her way through the crowd. So there were complaints last year that the use of pepper spray was indiscriminate. And just to give folks a background on what's been going on in Seattle, the Seattle Police Department was under an 8-month Department of Justice Civil Rights Division review, and they found a practice and policy of the use of excessive force by the Seattle Police Department. So since then, there's been a virtual stalemate on instituting reforms at the department, and most of the civil rights groups that were involved in those discussions have walked away from the table, and the DOJ has had constant threats of lawsuits because of this unwillingness to reform the department. So people were keeping a very close eye on what was happening. Basically, this came to a head back in 2011 when a Native American woodcarver was fatally shot by Seattle police, and their family received a $1.5 million settlement. And then during the Occupy Wall Street protests, police were once again criticized when 85-year-old Dorley Rainey was pepper sprayed and Mayor Mike McGinn was forced to make a public apology. So people were really on edge yesterday, not knowing what was going to happen next. But it's become an annual confrontation, Leslie. It's like almost a tradition in Seattle now where later in the day, after the main May Day marches and protests happen, and by the way, there was a very large peaceful protest.
Well, I wanted to ask you that, Mark. Just hang on a sec. Sorry to interrupt, but I did want to ask you that, and you're coming into my question, so you're entering my mind. That was something that I noticed. This is a pattern, definitely, of behavior by the police. Is it a pattern of behavior by demonstrators or who join the demonstrators? And I say that because there were hundreds of people who were peacefully demonstrating, which is their constitutional First Amendment right to do, and adhering to that First Amendment, at least from everything I read, everything that I saw. When the day gets later and the sun goes down, that's when it seems the pepper spray is used. That's when it seems the arrests are made. Are the people that are joining the protest after the peaceful demonstrators, hundreds of them, have made their point, and as the sun sets? Mark, what is your take? Are there some people that really aren't a part of these organizations, some fringe elements out there, maybe saying, having a couple of beers and then joining and causing problems? Or are the police looking for things, and if you look hard enough, you'll find it?
Well, there are 2 points to that. One is that there was a report by former Los Angeles Police Deputy Chief Michael Hillman in 2013 that found that Seattle had a very unsuccessful crowd management policy. That it was highly critical of the Seattle Police Department for not having any new crowd control training since the riots during the WTO demonstrations in 1999. However, it is true that what happens is you have the main march, which is a workers' rights, immigrants' rights march that takes place every year. It's been going on for decades. Mm-hmm. And that is always peaceful and well-regulated, and actually has applied for a permit from the city to have these marches. And our Mayor, Ed Murray, and our city council member, Shama Sawant, spoke at that event. What happens is there were other independent groups who are not affiliated with the main traditional marches who decide to strike out against capitalism, which they seem to think is the problem in the world today. And so they decide to take the streets without a permit. And what I witnessed last night was, yes, they were allowed to take the street and were followed by police for about 3 hours. Then finally the Seattle Police Department just made the call that we're going to clear the streets, we're going to open up traffic again. And that's when they use the pepper spray, and it's sort of indiscriminate. In other words, anybody who's on the street at that point is subject to both arrest and these crowd control measures. So what happens is they decide to clear the streets, and then at that point the pepper spray flies, and anybody who happens to be in the way, if you're a reporter or a bystander, well, you get caught up in it too. So that's what I saw last night.
I saw various reports on how many were arrested. I saw 7, I saw 10, I saw 15, I saw 4. Do you have the number of how many were arrested this May Day?
According to the latest reports, and there is a pretty good article over at Huffington Post about this today, there's 9 arrests.
Okay, 9. I knew it was anarchist. Do you think these people are anarchists, or are they just Americans who are speaking out strongly for what they believe and they're protesting? Why are the May Day people speaking about immigration reform and minimum wage in Seattle anarchist, but, when anybody else does? I mean, are Tea Party folks anarchist? I mean, when anybody has a disagreement with their government, why is it that this particular group on this particular day is categorized as such? And do you and the others in the Seattle area and with this group have a problem with that?
Well, there is a lot of dissension within the May Day groups about these tactics, and so it does cause controversy. This year, there was less talk of anarchists, and they were self-described as, quote, anti-capitalists. So what you have, basically, Leslie, is a bunch of young folks, students especially, who are very angry and are doing illegal acts to show their disapproval of a system that they think is full of economic and social inequities. So in some way you could look at it as these are young, angry folks, the young Turks, so to speak, who have very little respect for authority. And so it creates an inevitable confrontation every year when they decide to take the streets without a permit and just march wherever they decide to go.
Yep.
And at the point, like I said, the crowd-controlled...
definitely crowd control, bad crowd management. Mark, thank you for joining us. Mark Taylor-Canfield. Follow him on Twitter at @MTaylorCanfield. I'm Leslie Marshall. More to come here on The Thom Hartmann Show.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Coming up, 866-987-TOM is the number, and I, Leslie Marshall, will take your calls. We'll talk about the May Day protest, but we'll also talk about immigration reform and minimum wage. Hey, how you doing? I'm sitting in for Thom Hartmann again. Glad to be here on the Thom Hartmann Program. I'm Leslie Marshall, and you just heard my interview with Mark and Saw here on Free Speech TV, and thank you for watching. With Mark Taylor-Canfield, we talked about the May Day protest in Seattle. But the reason for the protest, and it starts, like he said, for decades, is immigration and immigration reform. Want to get your 2 cents on that. And also, speaking of cents, no pun intended, we're going to talk about minimum wage. We have a great guest coming up next hour. We'll continue that conversation. But it is a free-for-all Friday, so be sure to join us. 866-987-TOM. Let's start it out in Brownfield, Texas. Kevin is watching on Free Speech TV. Happy Friday. Thank you for joining me. Good afternoon.
Thank you, Leslie. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for taking my call, and thank you for filling in for Tom. First thing I wanted to ask about was TTP, the TPP, Trans-Pacific Partnership. You know, the negotiations are going on now, and apparently there's nothing being said about it on major news networks. And I was interested in any details you might have about that, plus the forced arbitration that certain companies like Amazon and eBay and General Mills are... You know, can you give me any information about that? You know, if you have a dispute or something with one of those companies, you have to go to their arbitrators and arbitrate it before you get to go to court. Can you tell me anything about that? Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. No problem. As far as TPP, my understanding is, and we did cover this on my show, and I'm just speaking off the top of my head in my recollection of that conversation. Just so you know, I'm very pro-union. And when the unions have a problem with something, I'm usually in line with them, not because I have to be. Usually that's just where my mind falls, because we have a very similar ideological mindset. There are problems with TPP, and TPP is the same problems we've had with every trade agreement, quite frankly, that the president has linked with the United States. And the problem comes down to, again, these are not alliances that are going to bring jobs back to the United States. That is a huge problem. Although we have, good numbers that are coming out lately in the past few months with regard to labor and how many people are being hired, the decreasing of unemployment. We see states going out on their own and increasing, minimum wage and companies doing that, and certainly the president with the federal government. You have to have a job to go to, and there just have been so many jobs, so many factories shipped overseas, and this is a multifaceted problem. TPP does not close that loophole of a problem, if you will. Briefly, regarding arbitration, I know it from a different angle. My husband is a physician, and I am, as his wife, a partner in the medical practice that he and a group of doctors owned. But at one time, it was just us, mom and pop, little medical practice. And there are doctors, we did not have it. There are doctors that will force you, technically, to sign an arbitration agreement before they will see you because they don't want to go to court. It's standard practice for a lot of companies. I wasn't aware, quite frankly, that Amazon did that. It's completely legal, but you also have the right to refuse to sign it, and they have the right to refuse to do business with you as well. It's a cost measure. A lot of people want to do arbitration and mediation because it's cheaper. In divorce, I hear, it favors the guy. So guys, listen up, and ladies, beware. I'm Leslie Marshall, sitting in for Thom Hartmann here on the Thom Hartmann Program. I hope you'll stick around. More to come. 866-987-TOM for Speech TV, 866-745-2667. Feel like having a beer and dancing, don't you? It's Friday. Hi, I'm Leslie Marshall. Don't worry, I won't do it. I do follow my FCC regulations and guidelines, even if I don't like them. The Thom Hartmann program is what you're listening to. Tom is out today, and I am in once again. Thank you for joining me or for rejoining me. It's a free-for-all Friday. We just talked about, with Mark Taylor-Canfield, the May Day protest and demonstrations, and once again, it's seemingly excessive force by the police in Seattle. But anything goes here. It is Friday. Let's get to the calls. And remember, these protests center around immigration and minimum wage for the most part. And I know many of you have very strong opinions on both those issues, especially with an election, midterm election coming up around the corner in November. All right, let's get to it. And we'll go to Frank at listening on KABQ in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Hi, Frank. How are you? Good afternoon.
Great. It's not why I called, but you hit on a sore issue of mine because I have been an activist and I have been arrested and gassed and pepper sprayed at protests, over 10 years ago. But in the United States, law enforcement is all about easy targets. So I'm guessing they're going to leave the Bundy Ranch insane racist traders with guns alone, and they'll definitely come after people like us, the concerned citizens who are just demanding ethics and responsibility and accountability. And one of the issues that Thom Hartmann brought up, he was the only progressive talk show host who I heard bring this up, is, they arrest these Occupy or activists. They pepper spray them, they arrest them, they put them on probation, stating that they can't associate with fellow activists, or you can't go to protests, or they'll violate your probation, and then they'll charge them with felonies so they can't vote. And I don't know any of the progressive radio stars that went and checked on all these Occupy people that were getting arrested, thrown in jail, and tortured while they were in jail, because most of these jail guards are sadists.
Well, Frank, to your point, and I'll be honest with you, you're right. I've never said that, but I will say that it is unconscionable that we had Occupy Wall Street members, even in Seattle, demonstrators exercising the First Amendment right, arrested because we do have a man and militia members there in Nevada who have broken the law. We did talk about this yesterday. They're setting up checkpoints and requiring that people give identification when they don't work for any state or federal law enforcement authority. In addition to that, they're disturbing the peace. In addition to that, they're bringing weapons. What type of weapons? Are these weapons all legal? Do they have licenses? Of course, we don't even know, probably not a background check if they got them at gun shows, right? The list goes on. There is no question that, in my opinion, and many of Americans' opinions, and not just on the left, that Cliven Bundy and his militia have broken far more laws than any individual at such demonstrations or from Occupy Wall Street. Very, very good point, Frank. Thank you for bringing it up. Thank you for listening, and thank you for calling. Let's go next to Jason, listening on Sirius in Washington, D.C. Washington, I almost named D.C. after you, Jason, and said Washington, J.C. Hi.
Hey, I wanted to talk about the fact that, we had Earth Day pass and so forth, and I didn't hear enough claim out there that we need to stop these ethanol mandates, which are an environmental tragedy. We grow an area the size of California in corn, of which 1/3 of that landmass is grown to put gas, or let's say ethanol, in our gas tanks. Now, you have to think of how much topsoil erosion, how much depletion of the aquifers and the water that are involved. And I remember a number of years ago, they cornered Al Gore at a green conference in Athens, Greece. And he basically admitted it had nothing to do with hard science. He basically says the reason I was for it was because I was running for office and I wanted votes.
Well, certainly there's a political element to this, and we know as of this month, the White House has not yet received the EPA's final rule on the ethanol mandates for 2014. On my show, I cannot remember the name of the guest, to be honest, because I do 15 hours of radio a week and television, et cetera. So forgive me, but I can check with my producer during the break and look it up. But we had an excellent guest regarding Earth Day. And it goes farther than ethanol. If you look back to the 70s, you had thousands and thousands of people that were so outraged about what was happening to our environment, to our climate. And this was way before climate change. And what happened? You had a Republican president, Nixon, who founded the EPA. Cut to the chase now, 2014. What type of, Earth Day organization and protest are there? There's not enough outrage, whether it is ethanol, whether it is global warming and climate change, whether it is our dependency on foreign oil, whether it's what we're doing to the air we breathe and the water that we drink and what we're leaving this planet to be for our future generations. That's a huge problem. I mean, the fact that we have to look to the 70s for more progress when it comes to the environment. I agree with you 100%. And it angers me that people don't realize. I got to tell you something. I wasn't really big into climate change and the environment. And over the past 2 years, without the inconvenient truth, over the past 2 years, simply from experts on my show and things that I had read online and things that I researched in debating people when I'm on television, because I am a liberal on Fox News Channel, when I would go through this information and I saw not just the inconvenient truth, but the truth. I couldn't understand why more people weren't outraged because, there are people that, quite frankly, have been hugging trees long before I was born. And in the 70s, for us to look back to that time in 2014, again, to have any kind of momentum on this issue is appalling.
The thing that scares me about this is the fact that all of our solutions that people propose never actually have to do with real change. I mean, we know that a meat-based diet creates more greenhouse gas than every form of transportation combined. But for years, you didn't hear Al Gore talking about, we need to become vegans, which would have a bigger effect, or maybe just switching over to meatless Mondays would have a bigger effect than all of these other things that we talk about. I mean,
and give the people making pasta a heck of a lot of money. Thank you for your call. I am out of time on that one. We're going to take a break. Be back right after this. I'm Leslie Marshall, sitting in for Thom Hartmann on the Thom Hartmann program. Join us, 866-987-TOM.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 866-987-THOM.
Hi, I'm Leslie Marshall, sitting in for Thom Hartmann. We're going to take your calls. I really want to get your take on immigration reform and minimum wage. That's what the protests in Seattle were about. Hey there, how you doing? Good afternoon. Happy Friday. Welcome or welcome back. I'm Leslie Marshall, sitting in for Thom Hartmann once again here on the Thom Hartmann program. I hope you enjoyed the past hour, and I hope you will stay with us for the next two. We are talking about a lot of essential issues, and one essential issue which, regardless of the majority of the American people supporting, is the lack of support by Republicans in both the Senate and certainly in the House with regard to raising minimum wage. And that's just, I think, just a sad statement for America today to ignore the will of the people, their constituents, and the people that they promised to create jobs for if elected. Joining us in this hour is national organizer for the 15 Now campaign. Check out their website, 15now.org, Jesse Lessinger. Jesse, thank you for joining us this afternoon. I appreciate you being with us. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, Leslie.
Thank you for being with us. First of all, this is not a surprise that the GOP would not support an increase of minimum wage to $10.10 an hour, correct?
No, it's not a surprise at all.
And secondly, $10.10 an hour from, research that I've been doing, there's a great piece in the Huffington Post that talks about 10. What about 12? It seems that economically, and I'm not an economist, but economically, the higher the increase, the better the nation, the company, and every worker across the board from low to middle and upper income benefit, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, 10 would be an improvement for thousands of working people, but it's not enough. It's not enough to pay the bills. It's not enough to pay the rent. And if we went to 12, or in fact what we're advocating for is $15 an hour at a minimum, I mean, that's millions and millions of dollars in the hands of ordinary working people that are going to spend it. immediately back and putting it back into the economy, giving our economy the boost that it needs in these times.
There was a caller last hour who said that a couple of callers. One said, we shouldn't have a minimum wage. We don't have a maximum wage. Another caller said that a minimum wage, why do we have to, that minimum wage jobs aren't meant to support families. But even two people making minimum wage can't really support a family and are still technically living below the poverty level, correct?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I would be very much in favor of a maximum wage, but the idea that minimum wage jobs, they're not intended to support a family. I mean, that's based on the idea that there's opportunity for better jobs out there. That it's it's the first step on a ladder to climb, and that I think is one of the great American myths, especially today. We actually have in the advanced industrial countries the least social mobility of all. That there aren't the jobs out there and that minimum wage jobs. It's not what people say about teenagers just trying to make some extra spending cash. I mean, the average age of minimum wage jobs in fast food is 28, and in fact it's a higher proportion of women, and the average age for women in these jobs is 32, and these are adults that they need to pay rent, and many of them have families. And the other thing is that they're producing tremendous amounts of wealth, record profits for these fast food companies. So it's not as if the money isn't there. It's not as if their work is not worth it. They need and deserve a living wage.
People have taken off on their own, whether it's in a city like Seattle with the mayor, Ed Murray, because Seattle's going to be raising its minimum wage to $15 an hour. And $15 an hour, by the way, is what people are asking for, whether it's in New York and Chicago, Seattle with these May Day protests. Seattle's going to be raising its minimum wage to $15 an hour over the coming years. It was a deal brokered by the mayor, Ed Murray, and blessed by labor groups, business groups, which is amazing because you really think of labor on the left usually in business or big business on the right. But again, this is a benefit to all. I was looking at a lot of different studies, and it's just amazing. Even the Congressional Budget Office says that, because Republicans like to use CBO numbers, but they only take pieces out of context. If you raise the base, the minimum, which I think should be called a working wage, not a minimum wage, but if you raise that base, middle and upper levels also are raised. So everybody benefits, even the rich CEOs at the top. The CBO said that 16.5 million people in America would have higher incomes. We want to say we're better off now than we were 4 years ago. This is one way to achieve that end.
That's right, and in fact, that's the 15 million that the CBO cites would be with the 1010 increase. If I
correct.
recall.
Yes, not even. That's what I'm saying. Not even with 15. Yeah.
If actually you went to something like 15, I think the people that would be directly and indirectly affected in terms of the families is something like 50 million Americans, and that's about how many Americans are living in poverty today, which is absolutely. It's an embarrassment that the wealthiest country in the world has such high levels of inequality and poverty. And so that's why we're fighting to go much beyond $10, that at the minimum we think we need 15. And you mentioned that.
Do you think you go for, you shoot for the moon and you get the stars? If you ask for 15, maybe you'll get 12. You ask for 10, they're saying no. And some people would say, well, if you can't get 10, how the heck are you going to get 15?
Right. I mean, I think that's the key thing, is that you have to push for as much as we think we can possibly win. Maybe we don't win at all, but you're never going to win 10 without going for more. And the people who say it's the other way around, that we got to do it incrementally. I mean, we've been told this for years, for decades. We got to go slow. We got to go incrementally. We haven't gotten anything like that. We're just losing. Working people are just losing their position. Losing ground, and I think it's time to go bold. That's the huge lesson of Seattle, is that we can actually win if we make very bold demands, put a lot of pressure from below. What you mentioned about the Seattle Mayor Murray's proposal yesterday for a $15 an hour minimum wage is an excellent step forward. It's also got some problems in our view, in that it takes too long
Because it's phased in over years.
Phased in, particularly for the big businesses. 15 now took the position that small businesses should be allowed, we think, a 3-year phase-in to adjust. The small businesses, they do struggle. It is harder for them. They're squeezed. It's very hard to compete with the large businesses. The large businesses get all the tax breaks, like here in Washington State. Boeing, for example, got an $8.7 billion tax break, the largest tax break in history. They're getting all the deals. They are making record profits. The McDonald's, the Starbucks, etc. And they need to. They can pay 15 immediately. So, unfortunately, Murray's deal, includes a 3 to 4 phase-in for big business, and this is his recommendation to the city council. So we haven't quite won yet, and that's why we're really pushing for even more out of the city council, because we think working people deserve more. But just the fact that we've gotten this far, just the fact that we even in a major city in the U.S. having a discussion about 15, and not just a discussion, but in fact, the mayor and the whole political establishment working in some form towards raising the minimum wage towards 15. It's an incredible step forward in change, and I think that's really due to the powerful grassroots campaigning that we built on the ground.
You guys have done an awesome job. Very quickly, we have less than a minute. Will the president spanking the Republicans and them not voting in favor of raising the minimum wage bring more people out to vote in November and actually benefit Democrats?
Yeah, I think I'm a little bit concerned. Of course, the Republicans, they reject this. The Democrats are putting it forward, but I'm not sure if they're really fighting for it. And now why is it coming in an election year, 2020?
Yeah, well, definitely it's political. But if you can ride the political wave and benefit, your own agenda, why not, right? Take advantage of it. Thank you for joining us. Really appreciate you being with us. When we come back, a quick break. Thank you, Jesse Lessinger. 15 Now, and check it out, 15now.org. I'm Leslie Marshall, sitting in for Thom Hartmann on the Thom Hartmann Program.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.